Hi, welcome to Russ's Kitchen. I'm going to show you my recipe for chicken in breadcrumbs, but I'm going to show you two different versions of this. The first version, I'm using white breadcrumbs, which I'm going to mix with grated Parmesan cheese. The second version, I'm using wholemeal breadcrumbs, and into that I'm putting in some gorgeous spices, giving it a little bit of heat and also almost like a Cajun kind of taste. Absolutely delicious. So let's have a look at what we're going to need. We've got our chicken here, we've got our breadcrumbs, white breadcrumbs and wholemeal breadcrumbs. I've used about 4 to 5 slices for each of these. Blitz them up with a hand blender in a bowl or put them through a food processor so you get nice fine breadcrumbs, and then let those dry out all day. It's really quite important that they start to dry out and become quite hard. That means that when we fry our chicken, they're not going to soak up the oil. So for our wholemeal breadcrumbs, we need spices. Now what I like to use is paprika, smoked paprika, turmeric, ground cumin, ground coriander, and a little bit of ground cayenne pepper just to give it a bit of heat, a little bit of kick. For our white breadcrumbs, we've got grated Parmesan cheese, and to coat them, some plain flour, some beaten egg. The first thing that we need to do is get the spices into our wholemeal breadcrumbs and the Parmesan into our white breadcrumbs. So let's do that. So before we mix our ingredients into our breadcrumbs, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get frying pans on with some olive oil, fairly generous amount of olive oil, so that that's ready, that's heating up. Obviously when you're doing this, you're probably only going to want one frying pan because you're only going to be doing one version. I'm showing you the two versions, so I'm keeping them separate. So let's add some olive oil, like I said, reasonably generous, and let that heat up while we prepare everything. Like I say, don't skimp on the olive oil because you want it to fry the sides of the chicken. You'll see that in a second as to why that is. That's great. Okay, so let's put our other ingredients into our breadcrumbs. Let's start with the white breadcrumbs and the grated Parmesan cheese. And I'm just going to mix that around, get it nicely incorporated with my fingers. You see, not a lot of skill really attached to this. So simple. And then our spices that are going to go into our wholemeal breadcrumbs. You can just put those all in together, and then using a teaspoon, just mix them around until they start to become incorporated into that breadcrumb mix. You might have to spend a couple of minutes doing this so that they're really well mixed in. And also into this, I'm going to add a little bit of salt and pepper. A little bit of salt. A little bit of salt into our white breadcrumbs. Black pepper, and I want this to be quite coarse. Now I'm fortunate I've got pepper grinder which you can alter the density of, so I'm going to make it fairly coarse, just so there's some nice chunks of black pepper. Mix that in as well. And then we could set this aside and we're all ready to start to bash the chicken down to size. Now it's time to beat our chicken down into the kind of thickness that we're going to need to make this dish. Now here I've got a piece of chicken from the butcher much bigger than you will probably get in a supermarket. So for 2 people this is going to be more than enough. So I'm going to beat this down to about ½ centimetre thickness, and then I'm going to cut it in half. That's going to make 2 really good sized portions. I've got cling film down here on my work surface. I'm going to fold it over the chicken. Don't wrap it too thick, because this chicken, once we start bashing it down, is going to expand obviously. Now I've got a meat mallet. You can use a rolling pin, you can even use a saucepan to do this. Whatever you've got is absolutely fine. So now let the violence begin. Let's start bashing our chicken. So there we have our chicken that we've bashed out to the kind of thickness that I'm looking for, and you can see just how big that piece of chicken has now become. So I'm going to take a knife and I'm just going to roughly cut this into half, and that is going to be plenty for 2 people. Right, so it's time to get our chicken coated and into the frying pan. So always a good tip, try and use one hand to coat everything with the chicken so you've got one clean hand. So let's take our chicken first of all into the flour. Make sure that we've got everything covered, and then just gently shake off any excess into the egg mix. And again, quite important that everything is covered in the egg mix, and then starting with our white breadcrumb mix into that, and then with our hand we're just going to take the breadcrumbs and cover the chicken and make sure it is really well covered. Which that is, including the work surface. And I'm going to take that chicken and put it into our heated frying pan. It's on about medium heat. And we'll repeat the process for our spicy chicken. So, into the flour, into the egg, and the breadcrumbs. And again, making sure we coat all of the chicken. And then that into our frying pan. Now they're going to take probably around 20 minutes to cook. We're going to turn them over. Keep an eye on them. You don't want the crust to actually burn. Right, they've been cooking for about 25 minutes, half an hour. They're ready. I've checked them with my meat thermometer. Core temperature at least 82 degrees. So let's put them on a plate. Chicken with Parmesan cheese, chicken and spices. They go wonderfully with pasta. You could put them together with potato salad. That goes brilliantly with slightly spicy potato wedges. It's up to you. Do whatever you want, but that is gorgeous.